hosting Blair Neal. Very, very excited to have him here, talking about all the amazing work that he's doing, but also things that he's contributing to the community. I will stop sharing and Blair, allow you to take it away.
Right.
Oh,
Thanks
hello, Matt.
again. Thanks so much for having me. Welcome everyone. Excited to talk to everyone. Yeah, thanks so much to Josh and the Future Spaces group for having me. It's really really great resource for the community and just to have a space to talk about this stuff and figure out new ways of working is really nice and sharing, which is a big part of what I want to talk to everyone about today. As Josh mentioned, I know that this is an informal space, so I will say that I think the thesis for my talk today is it feels like a work in progress, and I feel like there's areas where I'm contradicting myself, or some stuff is like a little loose, but I do think that a lot of the topics that I'm going to touch on will be really great for discussion after the talk. Um, so to get into it a little bit, uh, just to cover overall format, I'm gonna do a quick intro for myself for anyone who's not familiar, and then talk a little bit about sort of the complexity of the field of creative tech. Talk a little bit about how we can think about defining that a little more clearly, and then the last section is more around sharing ways that individuals and organizations can think about other ways of sort of contributing to the ecosystem of everything. So a little bit about me, as far as my artistic background, I come from I went to an engineering school for the arts program and just have tried a lot of different things, doing software development, doing live visuals for different bands, video art, music videos, light art, working with custom hardware. One of the projects I can mention briefly is like I just made like an AI generated tarot deck for like experiential concepts, sort of like a satire of like stuff that we do every day. Um, and it's like a thing that people can buy, which I've never done a physical product before. And I do like pen plotter art and illustrations, stuff like that. So trying a lot of things. And then in my professional background, I worked at an agency called Fake Love in New York for about 10 years, where we did a lot of event-based work. We did permanent installations and worked across like all the different kinds of technologies of like sensors and projection mapping and AR and uh, ephemeral events and pop-ups and all the things. And then worked a little bit at a company called Deep Local, and now I do a lot of technical direction, consulting, research work for lots of different clients and collaborators. Done a bunch of work with Sphere, do some work with Dot Dot Dash, and work really closely with Thought Process. They align well with me for like specializing in like feasibility, advisory, implementation for creative tech for like the digital and built environment space. So trying to do more like research and planning upstream so it causes less pain points at cost downstream for these projects because it's really easy to do. Um, but to get into the main topic, when I think about creative tech, it's such a complex space, but it's also hard to like explain that complexity to everyone. So when we're like when I'm trying to explain this to like a friend who's not in advertising or like someone's parents who's just like, what is this space? I feel like there's like this like nice shiny case study version of the work where it's like here's the beautiful video, the big description, the outcome of this thing, and it looks really great and polished. And I feel like coming out of those, maybe showing a video to someone or like trying to explain a project, like the follow-up question is often like, how do you make all this? These are examples of the some of the tarot cards in the deck that I made, but it's that's the harder question to answer depending on where someone's coming from. I feel like the simple version is this sort of basic, like there's a person who's like interacting with a sensor or a camera or a button or what have you. And then that's going into software that's sort of mediating that interaction. It's like it's got some back end, it's front end, it's doing some tracking or something like that. And then that's feeding into an output. It's like a robot arm or an LED wall or what have you. And then that goes back, ideally eliciting some sort of emotional response. And then the feedback continues. So like when we're looking at like a creative problem, uh, starting to frame the like creative tech approach in this sort of loop of like, all right, we're gonna there's some sort of input, some software we have to write, and it's got to show up somewhere. Um, and these all, we've got the nice version and then this, but I feel like my day to day actually looks like this, where it's like there's there's UIs and there's diagrams and there's just calculations and spec sheets and going through all the like product pages and looking at code and looking at projector diagrams and UI and GitHub issues and spreadsheets. Um, and it's certainly a necessary part of the work, but it gets it again like trying to explain the complexity of what it takes to get to this is really tricky. Um, so feels really big. Something that I always come back to is like, how can we make better sense of the whole space so that we can do better work? Uh, Another thing I could show to illustrate this is this creative tech taxonomy that I've been working on for a few years. This is like on a public site, but years ago it was just like an image um, of just trying to draw a little bit of a fence around like what are the types of tools and systems that we use on a day-to-day basis to like uh, kind of map out like what is in the space. So this is on a site, but I just have a video capture. But in the tool, you can like go in and uh, for creative code frameworks, there's all these different classifications. There's game engines. There's display technology, sensors, AV tools, AI, mobile tech, asset creation, and a bunch of other stuff. Um, when this tool for me has a few different uses. Some of them are like, oh, I can find something that I've never heard of before in this like one branch or something. If I'm a professional, or maybe I am a beginner looking for some information about like what's something else that I can look into to learn in this sort of domain. And then I think a third use is like explaining to people that might be further away from the creative tech space, like this is how much stuff we have to like think about on a day-to-day basis for like implementing a lot of these projects, because there's a lot there. um, and then I think funneling from that is there's a lot there, but a lot of it's not made for us. I think the industry, we've got a lot of people on the call, but uh, it's not nearly the size of a lot of these other things that sort of create the tools that we end up using. It's like we're getting sensors and hardware and other things that ultimately come from like medical, defense, automotive, manufacturing, things like cameras uh, and even like AR, LiDAR, thermal stuff. Like they're all coming from different industries, and then we have to think about how to adapt those tools to our use cases, and it can be really tricky to recontextualize all of those tools into a new use. And uh, on top of that, I think that there is this sort of like spectrum of problem solving that we have to go through, where it's like there's like a pure creative problem that or like topic that we're trying to work through, and then that tends to be more abstract, and then there's like we move towards less abstraction. The example I have here is like, let's say a creative director is like, I want those lights to fade between blue and green to better match the brand colors. And that decision might go down to a creative tech who's like, well, now I have to write software that can allow for color changes to go between these on a cycle. And then they may be only thinking in that domain. And then there's another level deeper where it's like, well, now there needs to be a piece of hardware that responds to DMX, which is like a lighting control protocol. And then that goes another level deeper. It's like, well, now I need an LED that can smoothly move between two color sheets. And that's actually not a simple thing that just happens, but it's like a whole other level deeper and so on and so forth down to like the bare metal of things. So it's not like one domain of problem solving. And then there's the other uh, dimension of like timelines and budgets that can factor into a lot of the decision making and problem solving. I think another view of it is just like the divergent convergent thinking where it's like we have to use both sides to like think about what is the creative idea and how do we sort of represent that in technology. Looking at it a lot as I tend to look at it as a medium of like using tech as a medium to like express the idea that's kind of trying to come across. Um, so with all that, I I'm like, how do I make some of this process? How could we improve like the distance between the hard technical problem and the creative problem? I think no matter what, there's always some amount of tedium in work in a technical space. Um, and there's a lot of people who like different levels of that creative process. Uh, I like more of that like flow state sort of creative work. And then where I find myself sort of pushing against is like, I know that someone's done this part of the project before. I've seen it done in this other company, and it's not really something that I'm not learning that much by redoing the same thing that someone else has done. So uh, the more that I can like look at that stuff, write it down, put it out, share it, hopefully trying to like shrink down that distance between the abstract and the real. Uh, so that leads me to thinking about like a lot of creative text define like we look at it as these intersections. Are they is it a useful thing to call it an intersection of art technology, or is it kind of a distraction? Um, I think a lot about like how do other fields progress from like a hybrid to an established space? Like biology used to be its own thing, chemistry, but then we have biochemistry. Cinema came out of theater and photography. Math, logic, and electrical engineering became computer science. You know, you can think of them as like they all got their own buildings on a campus somewhere, and that came from kind of creating their own theoretical frameworks, methodological approaches, uh, and I think another way to look at it is, or another example that I don't have on here is like architecture has kind of developed its own understanding of like the relationship between aesthetic vision and material constraints, but we don't say architecture is like at the intersection of art and engineering. Uh, they're working within their own distinct framework where material properties and structural requirements are part of that creative palette. And that's how I think a lot about creative tech as well. Um, so I think to get more of that process figured out, I think we need more frameworks. We need more common languages that aren't just borrowed from other spaces. I think we need methods that arise from specific challenges of the field. And I think having like a body of knowledge is really useful that have put more of like a concrete piece to that. When I think about things that are kind of unique to ways that we have to work, like we have to repurpose tech, going back to that other slide of like where stuff comes from. We got to consider those limitations that weren't of something that's not designed for us. What are those material properties for how it fits best in an experience in an environment? Thinking about that human sensor relationship, sort of adjacent to things like HCI or human computer interaction, but something that how could we like classify different types of interaction methods? Like, okay, I want to have some ability to like detect someone's body in a space, and then what kind of like interactions can I derive from that. um, I think that we could have a more uh, a more settled version of like how do we document these ephemeral experiences and things like that. I think we could have a clearer way to like test installations. There's a lot of like traditional QA processes for like digital products and things like that that can be automated, but every time it comes up for like a space where someone has to go in and like do multiple things, it's a lot harder to like automate and really make things resilient. And sort of related to that is like a lot of these things are made fast, and it's hard to handle data security and ethics in a good way for something that's in a physical space. And uh, I think that another piece of the like hybrid argument before I move on is there's some impacts I see are like career growth when it's always this like hybrid approach. It's like, well, you're either going to be on a technical or a creative track, but what if it was its own track? What if, you know, some of the processes might get prescribed to it, where I've been on many projects where it's like, we're just going to do a traditional software development approach on this. And it doesn't always work because there's many other considerations to be had. And then there's like education and training where like it's hard to develop like a focused program when everything's framed as like combining two different skill sets rather than like a coherent approach. So almost to my last section. So far, field's really big. Uh, there are domain specific methods, tools, and communities to be built that would allow us all to do better work. So then the question is, how might individuals and organizations help create some of these resources together? Um, so uh, that's brings me to this last section, where, you know, when I'm talking about resources, there's lots of different framings of that for me. It's like there's tools, which could be, you know, software or like literal tools for things. There's process of like how did you work through that particular issue. You can give money to other people that are doing these things. You can really give that information to research. You can give space for like maybe you just need a space to prototype something or have an event or what have you. You can mentor other people. Maybe you just have extra hardware lying around. You can share that and lots of other things. Um, so, and I think from all of the stuff before this, it's like we can't do the important work without sharing resources. It is an ecosystem and it requires maintenance and support. Because if we're all just taking stuff all the time, it's hard to like know how we're gonna feedback and like continue to grow if nothing's left for everyone else, or if people get burnt out from you know making a tool and not getting recognition or what have you for it. They might have to, you know, reality comes in of like I have to make a living. I can't just make tools for free for everyone. And a lot of this is not a new concept either. It's like there's this great talk from Golan Levin from like 2012 at FITC, where one of the main things that has stuck with me for years is like new media artists are the unpaid R&D department of ad agencies, and there's a lot of truth to that, and or like it's a complicated topic, um, but when I think about the advantages and disadvantages of not sharing resources, there's certainly like you can have a short-term competitive advantage if you keep that stuff to yourself. Maybe you're spending less time on community projects and more on your own work, which also allows you to focus more on like, I just want to do the thing that I want to do. But I'd say the disadvantages are your uh, innovation stagnation is more like for the group of people that you're working with. It's not just like uh, within your group, but you're not receiving stuff from other people if you're not feeding the rest of the system. And if you're not participating in the communities as closely, I find that you don't have access to those like early innovation tools that are coming around for people that are just like really experimenting and really getting in there. Makes me think of like there's lots of like great discords out there for like very niche like I'm on one for just like AI video generation, and there's like so many tools that I've never heard of before, and like so many people engaged in that, and it's really interesting to like see all these tools that are like really at the cutting edge because people are like in a community talking about them versus like an article got published about this particular thing. I think related to that, if you're not working within the community, you've got like reduced problem solving resources. Like it's a lot easier when we look at the wide field of like uh, it's it's so big that I know the things that I know, and I know that like maybe Jeff over here has worked with this particular audio interface before, and I need to be able to ask him a question about that because I'm just not going to have the like years of experience that he does. Um, And on an organizational level, I think there's like this reputation talent attraction loop where like if you're sharing stuff and like feeding the community, you're probably bringing in more talent that wants to do that and has also been working at the cutting edge of some of this stuff. And then last piece is I think that because we're so adjacent to tech, to the tech space, and like it can be, you know, a bit of a boys club or a little, you know, it's not always doesn't always feel as inclusive as it could be. So the more that this stuff can just be out there and shared for everyone, I feel like there's less gatekeeping for it. It's not just like this is mine, but it's like this is for everyone. Um, and I think I can also recognize like there's lots of barriers to sharing stuff. It does cost a lot of money. Costs a lot of money to run a business. I've been on the end of trying to like, how do I justify this weird R&D project that I can't say that the $5,000 it's going to cost is going to have a tangible outcome at the end, except that like, how else are we going to, you're either going to pay at the beginning when you're experimenting or you're going to pay on the project when you have to figure it out anyway. Um, Another, you know, things take a lot of time. Some of the stuff I've worked on take years to make. Uh, Client might not want to share stuff. Uh, there's some security blockages there. Stuff might be too niche or complex to share, might not be ready. Maybe you have something that's just so special that it does give you a competitive advantage. And then the last piece is that some of these tools can be it's hard to announce like, oh, I've got this great script for generating videos in the cloud. It's like, how would I tell everyone about that? Um, and I think that uh, for the competitive advantage piece, I think that the competitive advantage doesn't come from like hoarding individual tools or techniques, but from the unique ways different individuals and companies combine and orchestrate them. I think the real intellectual property isn't in those components, but it's in that like distinctive approach to problem solving, the like taste level, the ability to connect different elements into cohesive experiences. So like when you're sharing some of these discoveries, you're like strengthening the whole system uh, and sort of driving everyone to do better work. Um, I often get asked like, well, why do you make these like resources? Why don't you like put a book out or like make a class or like uh, you know why these are things that like should be kept secret for like your own use. And I think that my like funny thought about it lately is like just because you've like seen recipes or like things the tools in my kitchen, like that doesn't mean that you suddenly know how to use all of that stuff. I think there are ways to share that thinking, but I don't think that I own these things any more than like a cartographer owns a map or like a continent in the map or what have you. Um, and to that point, I'll quickly share just some of the resources that I've worked on. I'm getting near the end of the slides, but just for like examples that are out there, there's there's this survey of alternative displays. If you work in the space long enough, so many requests every year for like, we want a hologram, we want something that like looks like something we've never seen before. And it gets kind of tiring to be like, what was that transparent display that I saw from that project like years ago? And I just started compiling them into one spot, and then just was like, well, I don't, this doesn't just serve me, so I might as well put it up. And so there's a resource out there with like 40 different display types on there. Another one is, I think about 10 years ago, maybe longer. I wrote this like how to keep an installation up forever write up, where like I was early career, had a one of my first things at a museum, and it's like, well, this thing has to run for 3 months. How do I make sure that it starts up every day and like uh, is able to reboot from a crash and like do all these things? But there wasn't like a clear set of steps for that, so I had to like kind of make up like, here's what I think is here, and here's like a weird uh, scripts that you have to write for it, and here's like a way of thinking about it, and that made the rounds for a while. Similar thing for like this guide to projectors. I think the best way to learn is to teach. So like just being able, just writing stuff out about projectors helped me learn more about them. Got like a list of creative tech advice. I've got something about, um, we don't often talk about like the organizational level of working in companies for this stuff, but I have this write up that's like, here's an individual in a creative tech department. Here's that tech department in a company with like production and creative. Here's that company within a project that's like working with a client or a venue or a vendor, and then looking at like the ecosystem level of work. And I'll also say at the end of the talk, I have links for all of these on like one page that I'll share a link to. And then I'm working on a new project, work in progress with my friend Cam Goki, where we're trying to like collect a number of these resources into a sort of like wiki spot. Um, and I'll also quickly highlight some other projects that I think are important, or like uh, just good representative benchmarks, or just things that I think about a lot, like Open Frameworks and Cinder uh, are really interesting as a case study for like open source work. And I know that Theo Watson speaking in a few weeks is one of the like original creators of it. And I would argue that like, or not argue, but I would guess that both of those tools were probably responsible for like tens of millions of dollars of work done in like the 2010s for like across all these agencies. But I would also guess that like very little of that money made it back to that tool itself, because they did have like a donation page, but like when you start a project and you're like, oh, it's for free, I don't need to put that on my balance sheet, so someone else can pay for that. But then it's like, well, who is paying for it then? Um, and then another good one, creative applications, I think is like a vital resource for like presenting, tracking artwork, and like creative uses of technology in this space. I think they've been around for so long and have a lot of great stuff, but I'm pretty sure that they uh, try not to speak for either of these too much, but like probably have not gotten like, a big investment from an agency to just like, hey, great, keep doing what you're doing. Um, a couple other quick ones, HAP and ISF are two resources made by some friends of mine at VidVox that it's a small company of two people, and they love making tools in addition to their like core VJ software. One of them is HAP, where it's a specialized video codec. It really helps with playing back large videos, and it wasn't something that existed for a while, and now it's used in like dozens of high-end systems, and is used all around the world, provided completely for free, funded by those guys, uh, never funded by all these companies that use it or projects that use it. Um, I'm not saying they asked for money, but it's like I think there is some space between like, oh, these people aren't asking for anything, so they don't want it. But it's like, well, what if these people who love making tools had some resources to make more tools? That would be cool. Um, and I know that this is probably a background question, like, well, doesn't AI and ChatGPT help with like easier access with this stuff? And I think yes, but I think it doesn't absolve organizations and individuals of that like responsibility to community and improving the work. There's only so much that we can do with that. Um, so last slide, as far as that like list of thoughts of like things that I think people could do more either on an individual or uh, organizational level of like giving money and tools, giving credit. So many projects are like, we did all this ourselves. Yeah, but you probably use some other tools that even just like acknowledging that they're there can be a big help. Um, you can license tools, you can honor licenses. There's a lot of stuff out there that's like, don't use this for commercial purposes. And some people still do. Um, you can donate team effort, time, or equipment, sharing knowledge of something that you learned on a project, hosting and sponsoring community events, documenting projects, mentoring things. And I think one that I I don't think I see enough, but I feel like if companies were like, I'm just gonna drop like $5,000 or $10,000 a year on like an artist residency to like fund some like have people pitch a thing that they want to make and be funded, the return on investment for something like that for the company and community, I think would be huge for like such a small sort of stipend. So there's lots of different things to think about, and when I think about all this, like it is a lot of work. It feels intimidating. I feel like even being here today talking to you, I'm like I feel like certainly imposter syndrome of like there's so many other people doing great stuff, doing all these things, and I think at a personal level, coming back to like you're enough, just do what you can, and that's sort of how you have to think about it. But thanks so much for having me, and I'd love to open up discussions.
All right, Blair, thanks so much. That was fantastic. I mean, you were doing the Lord's work. All right, so okay, everyone, grab the QR code, and then we will move into some conversation here. Also, I talked to Blair about trying to make it so that you guys could buy those tarot cards because they're freaking amazing, and like that's a great way to support. I'm getting some, so y'all should as well. I'll see. I was gonna try to get a discount code, but now it feels unfair. Like we should just all pay full freight. Okay. All right, Blair, let's do it.
Yep.
So here's the thing. There were some questions that came up during the talk. If you want to ask, go camera on, and ask yourself, or just like raise your hand. I will call on you. Um, or just like, drop in the chat now and I can do it. Okay, so any questions to start? Josh, you had a is that it? I wonder if no, that wasn't a question. Okay, all right. Any questions to start, or I can scroll back up a little bit and try to find these. All right, or I'm just going to ask my own questions. All right. So here's a question, and maybe I think you actually addressed this a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, but what's Nora had this question, which is like, what's the best place or the community where we can like share knowledge, like, or like personally, where you'd mentioned some of those places, but like let's say you were starting out like and you were trying to like level up in some of these creative technology tools, like where would you go?
Good question, because I feel like the landscape has changed so much. It's like 10 years ago, it's like, oh, Twitter, it's fine. But now don't 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 do that. So I mean I definitely find a lot of stuff on LinkedIn these days, as far as like, just making general connections, but I do think it is hard to, it is a wide field and it's hard to find those ways um to get that word out. And I don't know that I have like specific recommendations for, because it does kind of depend on like the domain that you're in and things like that. Like general stuff is so much harder to get out there. Um, but it is a good question. I'm open to if other people have ideas, would love to hear them though.
I mean, I'll say personally, like if there's things that you guys want to learn, I'm happy to like host workshops and do stuff that do that here. It's one of the reasons why I started Future Spaces. I'd also say it was also interesting, and I don't know if you've covered it, but like I feel like people have very different learning styles.
Mm,
So I feel like I should have been diagnosed with ADHD way earlier in my life. But like I actually like literally need someone present for me to like learn anything. Like it's very hard for me to sit there and watch a video or tutorial. So like
right.
that's like in some ways like that's why we're doing this because like you guys are all here basically enabling me so I can actually pay attention. But I think it's actually very important for people to figure out like okay if they want to learn like what's their learning style, what's the best way that they learn because I think there's a lot of different ways to learn based on different learning styles.
Definitely. Yeah. I I definitely I'm definitely one of the more visual learners and love to like I love to diagram stuff out as you see in for a lot of these things. So um it's it's hard to and I even find like learning a lot of these tools that there's so many tutorials out there now, but it's like classes for me are a lot more straightforward for like they give me more of like a feeling of commitment to the project versus like, oh, I can just come back to that tutorial anytime.
Yeah, there's also like these like websites where you can like hire someone to like tutor you.
Hmm.
I was doing that for like a minute with my son, like to learn like Unity to like make games, and he like totally dropped out, but I kept going. It was like it was actually I found that super helpful. Um, all right. So, okay, if people don't have questions, I'm just gonna, oh, Blair, you and I can just go at we can
Yeah,
just go
yeah.
at it. So, you know,
Yeah.
I guess one of the things I'm actually super curious about is like, tell me a little bit more about the tarot card project. Like what, like, and like maybe just like was that just it was that part of your art practice? Like where, like what was the like, what made you want to do it? And
I think, I mean, some of it is like, I don't know, it's a ridiculous industry. And sometimes like, it's just like being in it for so long, it's like there's so many fun characters and like things to think about. And it does feel like mysticism a lot of the time. Like we're just selling this dream of this fever dream of a project sometimes. So it's like, the distance from the work to like tarot is like I was not a tarot person before I started the project. I will say that. And I even when I try to do like interpretations now, I'm like, I don't know quite how to read these, but it's still fun. But it started as like I just wanted to learn more about uh, some of the custom AI generation tools and how to use them. And I had also had some thoughts for many years of like, what if there was like a card game or some way to like do sort of role playing of projects together. And I think that I'd been mulling that around for a long time, and then was having a chat with a few people, and was like, tarot cards would be funny. And then I started like generating a few different cards and images. And I was like, oh, these are actually really good and funny and interesting, and was getting good responses from people. And then I was just running them, generating lots of images, thinking about like, the final review, the vendor, the UX designer, the data scientist, the surprise and delight, um, the intern, the scope creep, uh, all of those different like things that we face on like a day-to-day basis, and uh, things that feel very serious some days, and other days where I'm just like, I just need to like, I need to put put a clown nose on this thing so that it doesn't feel so so intimidating sometimes. And I think on top of that, I'm also, it's really interesting to like have a physical thing where I'm like, I don't know what people are going to do with this. It's just like it's a it's going to be really interesting. I just sent out like 70 decks last week, and it's going to be really interesting to see what people actually get up to with them.
I love it. I love it. All right. So Scott G had a question, maybe a comment, but he's packing for a trip. It seems like we have a lot of places to share knowledge, but not as many places to share resources and finances for people who are sharing. Would that be worth looking into? There's unions and freelancers unions, but not quite the same thing.
Interesting. I mean, one thing that I didn't touch on as much, but I do feel like we're seeing a lot more these days is like there's certainly a rise of the sort of Patreon class in software where there's like some really interesting tools for like I know there's one for doing the screen diffusion and touch designer. I'm pretty sure you can like get access to that through Patreon to like fund like ongoing development of it and things like that. But as far as like sharing to individuals, that can be tricky. Like if they're not explicitly asking for it, that can be really tricky. Um, One thing that I did years and years ago was like uh, we were on a project. We were using open frameworks. Someone had made like an add-on that was going to save us like you know a week of development, and I was working with the producer, and I was like, "Can we please like just set aside like $1,000 and reach out to this person and like have them invoice us for this because like they're saving us like many thousands of dollars by doing this, and it's like it's good to just feed that
Yeah.
back." So there's a lot of different ways, but sometimes it's down to the personal level. But it'd be interesting to look at it from more of like a community fund that kind of funds this stuff. I do think about like there's lots of tools out there that would be beneficial to the whole group of us, like CMS tools and other things that would make things easier. It'd be interesting to have like a consortium of companies that kind of put money into that fund and figure out how to use it more to like make tools that we could all use together.
I guess that exists a little bit on like, we do a lot of like big web platform stuff. There's like the Drupals of the world, which are these big open source projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason that they can exist is they have like Acquia, which is their agency version, like agency branch that pays for it or like kind of supports it. But that's I don't know if anyone's actually really figured that out. It's like how do you? I mean, maybe it's just almost more of like just having assumed etiquette that like you should be paying people if you're going to be using all their libraries or like, you
Right,
know,
right. Yeah. And but at the same time I get it. It's like budgets are tight. It's hard to just be like, oh, can we throw a couple of hundred more? And it's like, no, absolutely not. We can't. Um, so it's tough. Uh,
well, it's funny because budgets are because it's I think that's the other thing is that we're all kind of getting paid for time, right? So it's like, like there have been times where we'll get a project at Blue Cadet and I'll be like, like I know Red Paper Heart did the exact same thing. I was like, should I just like go ask it? Like, should I just ask the ender for the code base and like, like but I think there's like no. We have X amount of hours that we're billing to our dev team to do this. So like, we have to go recreate the wheel. We have to do it ourselves to
yeah.
justify the expense. And like those are weird kind of conversations or headspaces to be in.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think I think we all, I mean, I was saying it throughout, but it's like the tide raising all ships and like we all need to be doing well at various projects. So like it sort of behooves us to like share that stuff so that like, you know, clients all see this as like if someone has a bad project, it's kind of bad for everyone. And
Yeah.
it's like one thing I think about from a few years ago. I was doing a project at Fake Love. It was using this like weird treadmill that I know that uh, Red Paper Heart and I think Hush had done a project on, and I was like talking to Daniel from Red Paper Heart. I was like, we're using that same treadmill. Do you have any code from that? And he just was like, here you go, and you can just it's like cool. I don't have to spend like 5 days figuring that out myself, and it doesn't I don't think that we paid for it, but it was just like a goodwill thing um, among people working in the same space.
Yeah, I feel like it's like I know Dan Mall talks a lot about like value pricing. And there's that whole like Paula Scheer story of her making the city logo on a napkin, and a gesture. And it's like if maybe we thought about it more, if our pricing was really more about like the value that we create, rather than just like the amount of like grind and time, then it would be okay for us to extract that value and then distribute that value a little bit more fairly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
And then our internal teams can just do R&D and development and prototyping, which would be super fun.
yeah. Just
But I think, yeah,
making
but
sure I
I mean,
don't
I think,
miss anything in the chat too.
no, no, they're all they're gonna polish their lore. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Are there? Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
if
It's
anyone
always
has other thoughts or questions, I'd love to hear it too.
Josh. You have a question?
I have a comment. I want to just walk back just to a second of your Blue Cadet example because I think it's a good one where you're doing a project that has been done before. You you can't really you have to reinvent the wheel. But I guess my comment is, wouldn't it still be beneficial for everyone to just hire that person that did the thing just for like a couple of hours to come in as a consultant and make that kind of like an industry practice so that because every project is different. You may be reinventing the wheel, but even if you start from
Totally.
the exact same code base, you are totally gonna take it in a different direction, and you're still gonna give your devs all of that dev time that you've paid for and budgeted for. But you know, it would be this tiny speck of giving back to the community and feeding back and doing that kind of thing. And there should be practices. There should be like common industry practices like that we all do, I think.
Yeah,
That's less of a question, more of a comment. Sorry.
no, it's good. Um, and I think related to that, like uh, as Kelly just posted in the chat, I I am constantly impressed, like the amount of people that do sort of work and support the community. I don't mean the talk to sound like there's not much going on because there's so much going on, but it's also like it's interesting to sort of shed a light on it specifically and be like, well, what are things that we can all think about that maybe aren't happening as much?
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because I think that a lot of it I think actually almost comes down to etiquette. So it's like
Hmm.
Josh, you've done like a bunch of like really amazing AR work. And like maybe I want some like maybe there's something that you've done that I want to pitch to a client. It's like, is it okay for me to ask? Like, and I would say actually a lot of the stuff that like happened in future spaces is actually sort of born out of SOTA, the Society of Digital Agencies. And most of the time, and like the openness here kind of comes from the openness there because I've mostly just gotten like drunk with a lot of agency owners and we've just like shared, and it's just like knowing that like that etiquette is okay, kind of changes the affordances of what you're of how you're allowed to participate with each other. But
Right.
yeah, if you've seen something that we've done, just fucking ask. Man, spend $1 billion on fucking Cinder stuff.
Right. All in the warehouse. Just dust it off, pull it out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think also if anybody just has comments too, like jump in. This can also just be a conversation for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. No, but I mean, personally, like I would love to like to see more of that because I'm sorry, Edward, you had a question, comment.
Uh, well, if you want to finish your thought.
Oh no, no, no. I finished too many of my thoughts. You go.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was just going to say, uh, Blair, you've provided so many resources over the years, and I think not just digitally, but also physically as well. I think um, it must have been like 10 to 12 years ago or something, maybe longer, that you were maybe, or Kyle or Zach were hosting meetups out of the Fake Love
Right.
office for open
Mhm.
frameworks. And I was super appreciative of that, forming a community around that. And um, yeah, just wanted to say thanks for that. But also, you mentioned that you were working with some of these kind of UI tools, frameworks, and kind of maybe experimenting with some of this stuff. Obviously, on the art that you're working on now, maybe with other kind of initiatives or projects or whatever. I was just curious what your kind of reckoning is being like an old hat in the shader programming and C++ kind of
Yep.
optimizations and this type of thing, working in this new world. And is there any kind of like you know like I don't know, I guess like clearly there's opportunities in like lowering the barrier of entry and this type of thing, but also do you feel like maybe there's a higher expectation now around like the visual sphere and creative in general. I mean, Sora, Runway, all these kind of platforms, you can kind of, um, like type in effectively what you want.
Right.
You don't have to like know how to optimize vectors in Fraggerverts or whatever. So,
Right.
just kind of curious around like maybe what, where do you see people like the like creative technologists to have deeper understanding maybe of the opportunities in this new world of like lower barriers of entry and using the English language as, and prompts or whatever, or, taking these kind of tools and then plugging them into Touch Designer or, whatever kind of, yeah, just, I know that's a lot, but just kind of
Yeah.
wanted to get like maybe triangulation around where your head's at around this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, lots of thoughts of like, I think I, I have found a lot of good uses for AI, but I think as we're all experiencing, like being very careful about where and how to use it. It does serve that purpose of like, on that chart I had of like, does help, you know, move up that level of abstraction from like, we're not working in assembly anymore. We're not working in C++ anymore. We're not working in AI anymore. I don't know what comes after that level of working, but that's really interesting. I think another piece that, from the perspective of being in it for a while and like having to work with the more low level pieces, it's been interesting to see I do feel like maybe the open source space of this was a little more active like 5 years ago or longer. And then for one reason or another, I feel like now, if you would ask me like 6 years ago what all the tools were, I would have one answer. And now it's like, it's Touch Designer and it's Unity, Unreal, and it's web and like some glue stuff to like an AI and some glue between all of those pieces, but it's not as much like pure open source stuff, unless you count. There are certainly open source projects that are glue code, but they're much bigger things like Node and stuff like that.
I love it. All right, so Blair, we're at time right now. So I guess I'm going to say one quick sign off, and then Blair, I'll let you do the final sign off. One, come back tomorrow. Just come talk about Airbnb stuff with Isaac. But
Yep.
also like I'd be very curious from this community, like what are the, and you can just email me at Josh Blue Cadet or get me however you want. Like what are the sort of resources or like gaps or learning that you want, and like how can I help serve that, because I feel like I am in sort of a privileged position to be able to sort of bring people together. So like let me know what would be useful. But Blair, thank you so much. This is really really inspiring, really wonderful. All right, give some final words and move some tarot cards.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much for everyone. Feel free to message me anytime for links if anyone didn't get it. Just find me online somewhere. And thanks so much for having me. And again, any little thing helps as far as helping the space. So if anyone's able to do stuff, just find that one little thing and something will come of it. But thanks again so much for having me, and have a good rest of your Thursday, everyone.